Hello everyone, and welcome to Whitetail Driven Solutions YouTube channel. We are bringing you tips, strategies, and tactics to help you and your property be more successful. We not only invite you to subscribe to our channel, but also hit the notification button to be notified when we release new videos. Good morning. Cold February morning, I should say. The thing we're going to talk about today, guys, is we're going to chat a little bit from the truck here. It's a little chilly out. We've got a meeting here coming this afternoon, and want to try to get this done. Had some recent talk on this, and seems like I talked to more and more clients about this, the approach that I promote a lot, and just like anything, everybody has their own opinions, but this is one that I get a lot of slack on. But once you see it, you will understand, especially here, maybe if you're not in the which we'll talk about, the Iowa, Illinois, Kansas area. But if you're here in Michigan and you are in Wisconsin, Minnesota, this relates to more people than they know, and on a more personal hunting basis than a lot of people realize. The topic is the top 2 worst tree stand locations that you can possibly do, especially, and we'll highlight it, in, like I said, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, on smaller parcels. So the top 2 worst tree stand locations that you can possibly do. So number 1 is, up here in Michigan now, it's illegal to bait. A lot of people are still doing it. They still use it. There's if you hunt up in the Upper Peninsula, it's legal. Down in the Lower Peninsula, it's not. But the truth is folks are still using it. I don't know what the outlook is going into the 2020 or 2021 season, what they're going to do. As far as I know, it's not coming back. But truth be known, people are still selling it. People are still using it. So I've had some questions on if you do use it, like in the UP, well, what do I recommend doing? I do not. I think it's probably, there's two, and they're both number 1s to me, but there's 2 worst stand locations that you can possibly hang. The first one that we're going to talk about, in no particular order, is hanging tree stands on a bait pile. A bait pile concentrates more deer into a small area than a food plot does. It's the same theory as a food plot as far as bringing those deer to a destination location, an evening, that 3rd and 4th feeding location. But it's a smaller area. With here in Michigan, other states are different, but I'll use Michigan for an example. We have a 2-gallon limit when you are able to bait. You take 2 gallons if that is in a whole produce bait, which I don't recommend doing at all. But if you do use the whole produce, as far as sugar beets or carrots, let's say, 2 gallons doesn't go very far. You can't get too many sugar beets in a size of an ice cream pail, let's say. So what we recommend is, what I always do is, when you can use it, you go to the one bite bait, the corn, or a sweet feed. My goal is to open some people's eyes on why baiting, hanging a tree stand on a bait pile, is not a great idea. A food plot, guys, actually disperses the deer over a half acre, couple acres, whatever that food plot is, shot plot. That actually disperses the deer over that. Your chances of getting off that food plot are way better than getting off the bait pile after dark, out of your tree stand, and getting out of there undetected. A bait pile location, the deer are, because they're so concentrated on a small portion in such a small area, these deer are extremely on edge. Now, like I said, in Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, and places like that, Iowa, for example, you can't hunt over it, but it's illegal in the off season. These locations, these deer in those locations, are not anywhere near pressured. Kansas, 25,000 bow hunters. The entire state of Kansas has 25,000 bow hunters. The state of Illinois, 225,000, I think it was this year, hunters total, gun hunters and bow hunters. So here in Michigan, we have, I believe the sales were 625,000. That was one tag sold. So you do the math. We still have over 1 million, 2, whatever that case is, of deer hunters. You take those numbers and you put them in our habitat that we have with the small parcels, and it's a recipe for disaster when you're trying to hunt over a bait pile. Now, I've done it in the past. I've done it, a lot in the past, until I finally got into a rhythm of not hanging those tree stands over those bait piles. And to me, when those deer come in there, especially mature does, you start your process. Your does are the closest. It's just like a food plot situation, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But your does bed closest to your bait station, your food plot, your food source in general. So you have to be able to beat the nose. You have to be able to beat the sight. You have to be able to beat the brain, the eyes of a mature doe. At times, a lot of times, that's harder than beating a buck or a mature buck. So that is one of the reasons, is when you focus the attention on these bait piles, you start a chain effect that you don't even realize that you're creating. When the deer come into the bait pile, it's a super attractant. Deer love corn. They love sweet feed. You get the immature, you get the does, you get everything in there. It senses up the pellet count. I get it. Now, with that being said, where do we hang these stands? We hang these stands in transition locations, off of the food source. So that's the bait pile is the first worst place to hang the tree stand. The second worst stand location is on a food plot, and the food plot is not your deer done right placed in the right area. Surrounded by switchgrass with a soft edge, with staged or feathered edge into the timber. These food plots are where they should be. These food plots should be looked at as a sanctuary, just as everybody hears the word sanctuary as far as a bedding area. To me, what is extremely overlooked, this is another video coming down the turnpike here, but extremely overlooked to me is a food plot or a destination location needs to be within your realm of a sanctuary, and folks don't treat it that way. And that's why you create nocturnal deer movement. You create pressured deer. You're adding to the pressure in the neighborhood, and the object is you want to be the least pressure. You want to be the place that they go, that they feel secure in a sanctuary, but not just in the sanctuary of their bedding area, sanctuary in their feeding location. So number one, worst place to hang a tree stand is on a food plot or on a bait pile. Number two is on a food plot. The same theory, two different stand locations, obviously, but how do we tie those two together? There's a lot of talk out there right now, and a lot of questions that I get this all the time, that people just don't feel different situations. Something that happened during the year, your funding that you had for your property isn't there like you planned it was. They just don't want to invest the money into a food plot area. So what we do is I highly recommend a couple of things. Treat your food plot areas where they could be as your baiting location. Tie those two things together. So in other words, take the 2 gallons of corn, because you can get way more bait per inch, I should say, or bait per square foot than you can on whole produce, and it's way healthier for the deer. So not everybody's chewing on the same sugar beet or same carrot. If you are going to use it, disperse that 2 gallons of corn or sweet feed over your food plot area. What you're doing is you're creating the same theory as your food plot. Now, you're not going to get the tonnage. You're going to have to maintain it. The object of a food plot is you plant it, you maintain it early season. During the season, you let it go, you let it grow, and you stay off from it, and you have not only the tonnage in the ground as far as sugar beets or as far as turnips, but you also have the green of the leaf adding to your tonnage. With corn, With one bite bait, you don't have that, so you have to maintain it. Maintain it during the right hours of the day, midday. Don't be going in there early morning before you climb in the stand. Don't be doing it on an evening sit right before you climb in the stand and go out there. And the reason I say that is that ties into the whole scent elimination thing. Guys just aren't as much as you think that, you know, the scent lock is as powerful as it is, and it's a great product. We use it. You know, the no scent elimination product, we use it. The problem is a lot of people don't go. I get in a rush myself sometimes. A lot of people just don't go the extra mile, and you forget to, you know, spray your boots. Next thing that happens, you take bait in with you, you take corn in with you, you put it on that area, you climb up in the tree stand. Not only is your scent there, your scent is in the food plot or in that bait location from your boots, and the first mature does that comes tripping into there, it's going to be game over. So you have to remember that this ripple effect of bumping these deer, they go back in, they blow at you, they go off the food plot, they're back in the bedding area. These buck bedding areas are behind the doe bedding areas, so you can see where this gets carried away. So what we do is, how do we cure that? I talk about this all the time, and it's a very controversial topic. I feel very strongly about it. Once you see it, it's hard to pull people off those food plots. But where do we hunt it? We'll talk about that. Where do you hunt? I'm a huge transition area bow hunter and also rifle hunting. How do you hunt these? You have to create, it goes back to preseason scouting. You have to know where these bedding areas are. You have to know where to enhance your bedding areas. And guys, a lot of these videos sound, I get this all the time, you know, a lot of these videos sound like I'm a private land hunter only, and I'm not. I probably need to just stop and do a bunch of videos on state land hunting, because I hunt state and federal land myself just as much as I hunt private. But these tactics can be used, and that's what I was going down the road of these bait piles, is you can use these same tactics out on state land. A lot of guys say, well, if I put a bait pile out, I'm not going to, you know, somebody else is going to hunt it if I'm not there, and that's not the case. If you are allowed a bait station, and you are allowed, if you can use it, you're allowed a bait area, and you're allowed a tree stand. Make sure your name and everything is on it. If you have respectful hunters in your area, which we all hope that we do, they need to stay off from it. A lot of times they will, so you get that place established. But what you need to find is, you need to find these same areas that you can find on private ground. Yes, you can enhance them on private ground, and you can't on federal ground, and but it's the same theory. So on private ground, you need to be able to do this preseason scouting just as you do on state land, and you need to find these bedding areas. And you don't need to have an idea where these bedding areas are. You need to know where these bedding areas are. You need to know where your doe bedding areas are. You need to know where your buck bedding areas are, or potential buck bedding areas. And what you need to do is, you need to create a triangle effect. You need to put these bait locations, let's say, or these food plots in an area that are huntable, and that you can hunt these areas. You can be in that triangle between your bedding and your feeding in your stand location on a side access, like we've always talked about. You need to have that diagram laid out. You need to know where those are. It's a huge step, and it's overlooked 95% of the time. It sounds simple, but it's extremely a step. So what I always do, use that contour, find that area where you think the deer are in like a safe haven, whether that's you know, over the top of a ridge, down in a bowl, let's say, or a hidden ridge that hides you from your stand location, from where this bait location would be, or a food plot. And you know, that ties into another topic, but don't just plant these openings in the woods, guys, just because it's an opening, and God left an opening here, and we're going to plant it just because that's an opening, and that's where the food plot needs to be. There's a lot of food plots that I design on properties that are already there, and that end up getting planted to switchgrass because they're in a horrible location, and guys just don't understand that until you see it, until you show it to them, until you hunt it. Until you hunt a functional property, it all makes sense, and you'll never, if you take this tip to heart, you'll never do it again. So what are the main reasons is, do not get caught hanging these tree stands, in this trap of hanging these tree stands on these bait locations and these food plots, because of the you have to be able to get in, you have to be able to get out, and it's unless, you know, I always have this new approach towards folks, is I do these video guys not to say that you're wrong all the time. I'm not saying that people are doing this wrong, they're doing that wrong, but I take the approach towards my customers, like, if you feel that you can hunt over a bait pile and not get busted, and you can feel that you can hunt over a food plot and not get busted, then you need to prove me wrong. You need to show me footage. You need to show me trail cameras that you can consistently hunt these locations and you're not getting busted. If you're showing me dark trail camera footage, then until you can show me daylight footage of these bucks consistently, time and time again, on these bait piles, or especially the bait piles, but on these food plots as well, then I'll believe you that you can continuously hunt them. And by that, I want, you know, like I said, you know, prove me wrong. But I've been in this long enough that I'm trying to take the fail part of this out, because I've done it myself. I failed myself, and years ago, and when I finally got in a rhythm of doing this, and that's how I design these properties now, it's extremely mind-blowing. And it's the deer are, and each property is different. Each area of state land is different. I know the pressure's, you know, a little bit higher in some places than it is other places, but some places get extremely a lot of pressure, and that's an area where, if you know that pressure is that much, you don't need to be hunting there anyway, in my opinion. But the topic, the matter of the topic here is to go the extra mile. Take this into consideration. Make sure that you're in an area 100 yards, 200 yards away from your food plot, on a corridor or a transition area, on a licking branch, water hole, and use these tips, because letting these deer come out of a bedding area, a sanctuary, unpressured, and going past you, and going out to these bait piles, or going out to these food plots, or on their way to these destination feed locations, and being able to hunt them in a transition area, you are hunting a totally different deer. You're hunting deer that are, they know that when they get to the edge of that, within a 50-yard or 100-yard radius of that bait pile, they know, coming in downwind of a food plot, that their radars go extremely through the roof. If you are in an area where they're not used to being bumped continuously, and they're not used to, and that's not a danger, then you are in the driver's seat. So it's just like, I've got some video here I'll show you of a buck that a friend of mine were hunting, and it just proves that the deer never stops, never picks his head up, it continues on. And this happens time and time again. I'll show you another couple. I could show you video upon video upon video that would prove this, that these deer are just in this cruising stage, if you will, between there, and they just know that there's a spot where they got to watch their backs when they're bedded. There's a spot where they have to watch being attacked or hunted on a food source, a location, especially when it's a bait pile, because they're extremely on edge. Because they're all fighting with each other trying to get to that little pile, and that's why we spread these out over this area, such as a food plot, to ease that, to calm that down a little bit. But just watching the deer movements and their body movement, their posture, when they come past you in the transition area, that they aren't being busted, and it's not a continuous deal. Because let's face it, we would all like to say that you have 10 different tree stand locations, and you can do what they do in the Midwestern states, and you can hunt every stand once a week, and it doesn't happen that way. Most of the guys, especially my clients that are on these small parcels, are hunting 3 or 4 stands, 2 stands, let's say, and they're getting hunted every day or every other day, especially in the evenings, getting out of work late, running to the tree stand. We've all been there, and it's like the thing I always say, it's a recipe for disaster, because it is. You wait all year to get the opportunity to have a high success sit, And I'm not saying that you might not get lucky and you know, climbing a tree stand on the edge of a food plot one time and kill a buck. But the fact of the matter is, you've crawled in the tree stand one time. You haven't done it time and time and time again. So where did this fad of the food plots come in? You have to have food on a food plot. I'm not busting on food plots. I'm not saying don't plant food plots. I plant food plots ourselves. We do it on client properties. I promote food plots. Baiting in an area that's legal is fine with me, but used correctly. I'm not a whole produce bait guy, like I said, but I am a, you know, sweet feed or corn guy in an area that it's legal. Different topic, but where did this fad of the food plots come in? The fad of hunting the food plots, guys, came from the Midwest. It came from, and I don't like calling them dream states or fantasy lands, or because the Midwestern states, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, these states, Ohio, these states are a totally different situation than we have. A lot of these states are geared towards, they make more money on non-resident hunters coming in on their licenses than they do on resident licenses. The lodges, the outfitters that are there, they all make a living on hunting. So it's treated extremely different than it is here in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. What you have to look at, guys, it's a pressure deal. It's not, you cannot take Iowa, for example. Everybody likes to watch the big names on the Outdoor Channel, and they're extremely successful on it. Problem is, the difference is that they are hunting unpressured deer. They are hunting deer in Kansas, for example, where there's 25,000 total bow hunters. They're hunting Illinois, where there's 225 or 250,000 tags sold. It's not. It's totally different. It's not a location where these deer are getting busted off these food plots time and time and time again. Now, with that said, does this happen down there? It happens more than you would know. Outfitters that aren't using, you know, rotating stands as they should, hunting the right locations, hunting transition areas instead of doing this, these deer get pressured. If you've ever been on a hunt down in the Midwest where you're hunting with an outfitter and you're in a tree stand that you know other people have hunted, but you've been told that it isn't overhunted, and the deer, before when they enter the food plot, are blowing at the field, or they walk past you and they immediately pick you off in a tree, that's pressure. That's the only way that is created. They're not spooked by a tree stand. They're spooked by what's in the tree stand. So I think if a lot, you know, once I talk to folks about this and you see this, it makes perfect sense. So I will go above and beyond to help people understand this about hunting these transition areas and understanding why it's so important not to hang these tree stands on the edge of the food source, fields, crop grounds, and the food plots and bait piles. You need to hunt these transition areas. You need to get away from the bedding and the feeding, and you need to be in the center. Now, closer to the rut, you can push the envelope of hunting the bedding areas. I'm not a internal bedding area hunter. I don't promote it. I don't design it that way at all. And it's because I treat those as a safe haven, just as well as I treat the food plots, the bait stations, and the cornfields, the destination locations, as a sanctuary as well. And once you start handling things that way, guys, especially, now take all these things that I had just referenced to, these bad ideas, and throw them into 20 acres or 40 acres or 80 acres. You can really see how things go downhill and turn bad in a hurry. So the areas that you need to be in are these transition areas off the food plots. If you are out on state ground or federal ground, use your bait location where it's legal. Use these bait locations as a food plot. Find these areas that these deer are bedding in. Find your doe and your buck bedding areas. Use those areas as your feed locations, your bait piles as your food plots, and hunt off from them. Hunt the deer going to them. on a perfect location, like I said, to hang one of these licking branches. And you can hang these licking branches on state and federal ground too, guys. I recommend, you know, taking them with you when you leave or something maybe, but yeah, I mean, if you're in an area low pressure, then you can leave them there. But these are the tips, these are the strategies that I use, that I have been very successful putting clients on, and myself in hunting. So yeah, take that to heart. Kind of look at these properties, and that's what I hope with these videos that I'm doing. I can see a lot of people starting to think, and when people are thinking, things are happening. Good things are happening. So yeah, when I, you know, like I said, when we were talking about these, no matter what the topic is, you know, kind of look at your property and say, boy, man, maybe this is what I'm doing wrong, or this is, you know, I had a gentleman ask me yesterday, they cleared out a ditch and a river system, a creek system that went through that was overgrown, and it, you know, there's low deer numbers. And as we're talking, I asked them what they did with the brush, and the brush and stuff is piled along the edge of this creek that they cleaned out. All this stuff, once you start talking to somebody about it, it starts making sense. So you can kind of pick and choose through what worked and what didn't. In my profession, in my business here, guys, that's the equation that I strive to take out of the, or that's the, you know, the topic that I strive to take out of the equation for you, is the failing part. So this video, top 2 worst stand locations are to hang stands on a food plot, or to hang stands on a bait pile.